Hello everybody, welcome to Production Music Live. My name is Guido, I'm over from Cat and Beats, and today we're going to be talking about low end. I like low end, I like it a little bit too much, and I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks with you, and after we're done with sharing tips and tricks, I'm going to be also sharing some tips and tricks that are going to probably suck a little bit for you, but unfortunately we have to go through that as well. The truth hurts. Anyway, let's start with low-end fun tips, and the fun tips are going to be in Ozone 8, and also with this thing here called J37, but that's going to come in a little bit. Let me just turn this off for a second. Let me also show you before and after. So before, this track sounded like this. And after we're done with it, it's going to sound like this. Before. All right, it was about the low end. I know there was a little bit of sparkly top too, but it's mostly about the low. So let's get started. Low end, there are a couple of ways of going around low end. You have a static way of going around low end, which is basically EQ. So you EQ your low end, and there's a couple of go-to ways of how to EQ your low end. And there is a dynamic way. So you have multi-band dynamics, and there is a couple of ways of going around this as well. So let's discuss both. We have 4 things to go around right now. Let's first start with static to get everything in check, the easiest one to cover. So the vintage EQ, what it's known for is a little bit of low-end trickery, and the trickery goes as follows. What you can do with this vintage EQ is you can select a frequency, and then you can low end boost it. And as you can see, there's a lot of low end being boosted. This is where quite a big problem arises. And that big problem is there's no definition. So everything in the low end goes up. It's just, there's nothing amazing is happening. So if we currently go on gain match and we click on bypass, then you can hear the difference. It's just a whole lot of low end. It's not sounding good. That's a bad thing. So what the vintage EQ was known for, the Pultec EQ was known for, or is known for, is that you can also take a cut frequency, so this mid cut, and what you can do with this mid cut, I'm just going to extremely show it to you like this. What you can do with this mid cut is focus directly on what you want to boost. So instead of saying, I want to boost everything in the low end, you're going to say, I really would like to have the oomph instead of the. So let's just do that really quick. We're going to give a little bit of a boost overall. And now we're going to cut. And I like cutting really extreme and then having it click through the frequencies to see which one is going to give me the best result. So let's just take the 200 area, and what we're going to do, is just slowly put it up. So this is what we're listening for. That like that hollow sound, and we're going to slowly put it in and see when it sounds good. About there. Let's bypass it. Let's also give a little bit of top end so we have it controlled overall. All right. Otherwise, it's completely unbalanced. Okay, so that's that. It's focused, and it's a really fast way of getting your low end in control. Obviously, I put a really big high boost there, but it was just a little bit out of control there. So it's nice, but it's not giving me full control of what I need to do. What I need to do is use that same trick, but let's use that same trick and focus it more. So what I really want to do is get the kick drum, for instance, to really come out. And I can't, with the vintage EQ, select a different frequency than these frequencies. I can't do that here as well for what I'm cutting. So with the equalizer itself, I can actually go completely anywhere I want, a parametric EQ. So what we're going to do is first have a listen to the track, the low end specifically here. What you can do is you can hold Alt and you can find the kick frequency or the frequency that you really want to get out. That's just whoa. So let's just take this frequency here. If I leave my mouse there and just double click, I instantly create a tiny little bell there. And what I can do with that bell is focus it. So I can cue it here. All right, so a little bit of a gain there. Let's widen the cue a little bit. And then at the same time, let's do a cut. And again, let's use the same principle. Just bring it down completely. And then check out the frequencies and see which one is going to make that kick drum come out more. Okay, so for me, 257 is where we need to be. And I'm going to now put this gain back up because minus 26 or whatever gain we were just at is ridiculous. Let's put it down a little bit. Put up the top as well, otherwise it's going to be completely out of whack again. And now let's go through bypass and check out the difference again. Slowly getting it focused. Now, let's continue going. And in this static EQ, you have also something called mid-side EQ, which we kind of need to cover as well, specifically for low end, because many people always forget to put way too much low end in the side frequency. As you can see, I just click mid-side, and then you have a mid mode and a side mode, and we can solo that now. And the annoying part about if you have lots of low end in the side frequency is that the track will sound a little bit muddy, a little bit all over the place. And that's because both speakers aren't firing at your face at the same time. If you really want a big impact or a big oomph, oomph, you should have that in check, or try to at least, or check if you like that. If they both fire you, it's just going to go pop, hit you at the same time. It's not going to be phasey. So what I'm going to do is just cut that low end so that we don't have a rumble there. Like that. All right, now for good measure, let's give that a little bit of a bump at the top, and then we should be pretty much done with mid-side. All right. By the way, when you do this mid-side type of EQing, sometimes it can take away the warmth of the track completely, so watch out, okay? Don't always, like you see, I'm always checking bypass. I'm always checking, is that a good change that I did, or is it just different? All right, so now that we've done that one, let's continue going. We're going to go over dynamic EQ, or dynamics, they call it, but it's multi-band dynamics. We're going to specifically focus here. And last week, what I showed you, or last time what I showed you, was how to do the high end. The high end, what I said, if you want a smooth high end, just, take away the attack, a little bit of a fast release, and smack it away, and then use your parallel to bring it back in if you need to. But right now, we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to take a lot of bit of attack, a kind of fast release, so same release, kind of, and we're going to set that correct accordingly. Now the ratio, I'm going to keep it 2:1 as well, just for easiness. We're going to listen to only the low end. Now what I want to do is I really want to focus that when I bring my compression down, I want my attack to be slow enough so that I can only hear the oomph of the kick and not the all right? Basically, we want that instead of the. So that looks like this, by the way. So if I would do that here, I have a little example. I'm just going to zoom in here. And this kick sample is quite long. There we go. So I'm going to, if I have a slow attack, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on the first transient, the first part of the actual kick drum, instead of having this. And with a fast attack time, I would take away the first part of the transient and have the emphasis on the latter parts. Okay, so let's just show that in the works. Check this out. You can actually see that here. I have a slow attack. The first part of the kick is being let through, and the latter part is being compressed, so that we have a really thick, like, kicking kick. Okay, I don't know if thick is the right word, by the way. Now what I want to do is I want to use my ears right now to set the attack time and release time perfectly. And the way I like to think of it is that I want to put the focus around the kick. So what I want to think of is that I'm putting two brackets around here. So I'm really making sure that I can hear that first part of the kick and that I can't hear the latter part of the kick. All right, so let's just do that really quick. I'm going to compress it way over the top. Okay, let's bypass. Can't bypass. 1 second, I need to bypass here. Okay, so in the bypass mode, if I turn this off, you have, which is not a bad thing. Here we have tuck, 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 and here we have. All right, so what I want to do now is have a listen overall again, but obviously now that we've turned down a lot of the kick drum, we need to adjust the gain back up. I'll do that in a second. Or adjust the parallel so that we have more kick or less kick coming in. So let's just also adjust this too. We have almost no low end. Bypass. Heavy low end. Low end has disappeared. It's very focused now. Let's put this back in. I'm cool with this already, but for instance, if you would have done this over the top and you're finding yourself like, there's no more low end, go through the parallel knob and then slowly put it back in. Also, don't compress too much here. In this stage, your low end should have already been sorted, so I would actually say fix most of that in the mix. Talking about fixing, the dynamic EQ is amazing for fixing, and what you can do in dynamic EQ is you can really find a specific frequency. So instead of the filter type, where it's a big thing that just keeps going like that, we can filter specific frequencies. Let's, for instance, say that this track has a annoying tom at 100 or 152.40 hertz, and it goes, and you're listening to it like, that is a bit annoying. What you can do is you can take it, you can take the attack off completely and put the release a little bit slower, and what will then happen is you completely get rid of the frequencies. So this is a fantastic way to deal with problems. Let's just find a problem, because there's no problem really in the low end. The track already sounds pretty good. Let's just find a problem somewhere in the middle. Okay, I'm not really hearing much of this clap. So another way of using this dynamic EQ is actually to use it in a upward mode. Now, every single time that clap hits, because I'm on the specific frequency of that clap, it's slowly being put up a little bit. So remember that, but this is most of the time you're already going to be in a mix, so you can just kind of put up the clap a little bit. So dynamic EQ, it's for fixing issues. Also, by the way, in the dynamic compression or the dynamic itself, you also have a upward compression which is, where the hell did it go? No, I forgot where it went. Oh, here it is. You can do upward compression as well. So as you can see, normally you have a negative ratio. I never use this thing. Normally you have a ratio that goes downwards, and you can also change the ratio so it goes upwards. So you have upwards compression. So let's just say the kick drum doesn't exist, or the whole low end area doesn't exist. Then you can say oof, 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 that it goes up every single time. Yeah, every single time an input comes in. But these are problem things to fix, and this track is already good. Now, regardless of all that amazingness, cutting away a little bit of the top and using dynamics to fix things, you also have a saturation and an overall knob that does exactly the same thing. So with the J37 or any type of tape plugin or actual tape itself, what happens is one second, let me just get it so I can show you every single time. With tape, what happens is the following. Depending on the tape and the inches per second, you can do something called a tape bump. So this is what's happening in the tape itself. And it's going to be cutting, and it's going to be boosting a little bit as well, and it's going to then be cutting a little bit. So this is a general tape shape. But what this tape will do, which is the cool part, is also going to be dynamic. So it's going to bounce with the track. So it's going to give you a little bit of a little bit of shape to it, and a little bit of sexiness to it, because it's nice to have things that move. And then on top of that, it's going to saturate a tiny little bit. So it's going to give quite a lot of character to the track, depending on how hard you drive into the tape. So on top of all these little things, we have a final version of this. Before. All right. And as you can see in my tiny little mastering chain, we have the dynamics doing almost the same attack and release time. We have a little bit of a equalizer in mid-side mode, and we have a vintage compressor, but this is actually doing more of the mid, and we're going to talk about mid another time. I also have an imager, but more on that another time as well. So now we have that done. Let's talk about the depressing stuff. Sorry, I'm calling it depressing stuff, but it's just reality sometimes has to hit you, right? So unfortunately, the reason why most people have an issue with low end is because their rooms aren't really made for low end. And making a room for low end is a bit costly, because real estate is a bit expensive. No amount of treatment is really gonna, help you that much. You just need a particular amount of size. No matter what kind of foam people say you need to buy. Don't buy foam for low end, by the way. What you're going to have in your room, and even in like a really nice studio, you're going to have something called bass buildup, where you're going to be sitting, and you're going to have some bass nulls as well, also where you're going to be sitting. So there's basically a buildup of bass being way too much bass. So let's just say that here we have too much bass, and here we have a little bit of a null, or the other way around. Okay? So, or it's like this. But regardless, what unfortunately happens is people start mixing their track, and they're mixing their own room. So let's just say that this is the room. It has a big buildup at 100, and has it has no bass there. People will mix their room, and instead of actually mixing what they need to be doing, they'll be doing this. And their track is going to have way too much low end, almost no 100, and it's not going to translate in your car, at your girlfriend's house, or your mother's radio. It's just going to sound odd. And what you want to do is first figure out where these problems are. Because if you know where the problems are, you can write that down, you can remember these problems, and you can try to remedy them as good as possible. So to find the problems, get yourself a copy of Operator, click on the Fix knob, and then after you've clicked on the Fix knob, you have a frequency knob in which you can filter through the problem area. Let me just also turn all this stuff off, because otherwise it's going to be weird. And what I'm going to do is slowly go up. And go through the frequency. And what I'm going to do with my pen and paper is write down exactly where there is a bass buildup, because you'll hear your room go, it's quite cool. And then where there is a bass null as well. I'm going to write those things down and remember them. So when I'm mixing a track, I know that if, for instance, I have 35.7 hertz, which is going to be the problem, if I'm noticing that I'm putting this 35 up a lot, I'm probably EQing my room, and most likely there's already a hell of a lot of 35.5 in it. I just can't hear it because it's being nulled out. Yeah? So remember that, write that down, go through it. Now, to remedy this problem, by the way, don't buy bigger speakers, because it's just going to amplify you're just going to have bigger bass bumps and bigger bass nulls. What you should try and do is, well, one, get to know your speakers, but first try to move them closer to you, your speakers, move them further away, move them more narrow, move them wider apart. And then every single time, write down your frequency, figure out where your problem frequencies are, and then eventually you're going to come to a perfect little area where the bass is just going to sound as good as it's going to get, but you're really going to be like, okay, this is great. You know, I really know my speakers now. I know where there's problems. I know my room, and you will have taken away most of the issues. Now, on top of this, you can also go with a software solution. For instance, if you have this, EQ here, what the software will do is it will reverse that EQ. Wait. And at the end of the day, what you'll get is a flat EQ response. A software company that does that is Sonarworks, which will work system-wide over your whole system. It's great, but it also has a big drawback, and the big drawback is it will also correct your phase. And if you have a mono button and a dedicated mid-side button, it will give you a fake information on what is actually in the mono, what is actually in the side. But this is a bit of a snobbish problem to have to begin with. At the same time, Sonarworks is great. If you're noticing that you have bigger peaks than like -6, reposition your speakers again, because if it's bigger than like -12 or so, it's going to start giving you odd distortions like when it's turning it up. And regardless of that, regardless of what Sonarworks does for you, check it again with the frequency thing here, and check again where you're going to have an issue, okay? Because you have to know this. Now, on top of all this, okay, I'm just giving you a lot of stuff to do. On top of all this, on top of, you fixing everything's perfect, you can go to an acoustician like John Brandt, get your room as perfect as possible. All these issues will get less and less and less and less, but you're still going to have some issues. How do you know what is the correct amount of bass? The answer here is reference tracks. You have to have a reference track, and the reference track will have the perfect amount of bass. So the reference track is going to be your perfect solution there. So if you, for instance, have a track that you just mixed or mastered, or you've made it, and you're listening to it, and the bass sounds amazing to you, and then you check it compared to the reference track, and the bass sounds better than the reference track, unfortunately, you have done an incorrect job, because the reference track is the correct amount of bass, and most likely you've just EQ'd way too much in it according to your room. The truth hurts sometimes, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. If you want to know even more about bass, there is a fantastic podcast by Ian Shepherd where he speaks about bass and uses that reference analogy. And on top of that, I just did a mixing and mastering thing on my YouTube channel, so check that out. It was also about bass, part 3 it is, where I show more tricks, but then I show them in the mix. So, much love. My name is Guido from Cat and Beats. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I will see you again soon, and have a lovely bassy day. Bye-bye.